feature presentation.
Welcome back to another Untitled streaming review. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric Merchin.
Yes, my young apprentice.
Do it!
We are talking Star Wars.
I love talking Star Wars. We don't get enough, although we're getting a lot right now. I say we don't get enough because we got a ton of it, and then
Well, compared
it
to
kind of slowed
Marvel,
down.
right? Where Marvel, I think, has been
Yeah,
more
maybe that's it.
consistent compared to Star Wars, but we are getting some of the best Star Wars as of late with Andor.
Which is criminally underwatched. So if you're listening to this and you haven't watched Andor, what are you doing? Go watch it. But today we are reviewing Tales of the Jedi, which is a animated show on Disney Plus. It's now available to stream. It is a series of 6 shorts in varying length between 13 and 17 minutes, usually focusing on one or a couple different Jedi, filling in gaps and moments and story beats from the prequel era of Star Wars. So, created by Dave Filoni, we know that he loves that kind of era of Star Wars, and he is that
He's
guy
no
who was
phony
kind
baloney,
of
Matt.
man. I love Dave Filoni. I really do, because like I feel like everyone kind of poo-poos on the prequels, but I feel like Filoni is that guy who is kind of redeemed them in a sense with Clone Wars and whether it's stuff that's happened in the other shows he's been involved with of like adding characters or giving context or things like that, and he kind of continues that with this show. So if you're a fan of Clone Wars or the Bad Batch, you kind of know what sort of animation style you're getting into and what kind of storytelling you're getting into. And then I think your enjoyment will be varying, much like any kind of anthology series, based on if you like those animated shows and depending on what the story's about. But I don't know. I think that kind of covers what this show is, right, Eric?
Yeah, and like I think giving credit to Dave Filoni is important because he's been with the series of animated shows and as a consultant on the live action stuff for so long now that he's been through thick and thin and seen the good and the bad and continues to have this passion that never seems to waver, which like you would think that anybody that kind of went through what the prequels were in terms of the critical response to them and the quality being kind of varied but still having that love for the world and the characters within it and trying to flesh out sort of those arcs and storylines that inspire him as a filmmaker and as a storyteller himself. So with that you can really tell, like, even within these shorts there are moments that are intriguing and interesting, but it's also very much prequel padding in a lot of ways
Oh,
where
totally.
you're getting these stories that are kind of mostly focused on Ahsoka and Count Dooku. And
3 episodes to Ahsoka, right? And then the other 3 are Dooku, or 2 of them are Dooku? And
Dooku's this. So it starts with Ahsoka, which was kind of like her origin of how, like,
yeah.
when she was born and her community and her village and sort of a way of life and death and a passage of one generation to another. And then you get a lot of Dooku kind of in between that, where two of the stories are very similar and almost kind of like a detective kind of storyline, where you have Dooku, and in the first episode, I'm not really ruining anything because the character looks like a young Qui-Gon, who's voiced by Micheál Richardson, who is Liam Neeson's son. In
Yeah.
the first episode, like
It is treated like it's a reveal.
at
in
the end of the episode, it's like, yes, Qui-Gon, and it's like, oh, Qui-Gon without the beard and long hair. I wouldn't have known, but he looks exactly like a young Liam Neeson. Which I guess is a compliment to the animation style, getting even though it's a very harsh looking and striking looking sort of animation style with the humans, everything is very kind of square and the symmetry of it is very much aligned. But yeah, you get the Dooku kind of Sherlock Holmes kind of stuff, which is kind of fitting in a way because Christopher Lee played Sherlock at one point, so that kind of makes sense. But it's also strange because the actor who's voicing him
Corey
sounds
Burton.
more
Yeah.
sounds more like Alan Rickman than Christopher Lee, in a lot of ways. But I think the one I liked the best of those two were the second episode, the second episode with Dooku, but the third episode, Choices, which is Dooku and Mace Windu kind of, you have these two conflicting ideologies and sort of practices of how to approach, dealing with the situation. One is kind of rigid and following the council's orders, and then the other one is trying to kind of, live in the moment and do the right thing and be a little bit more kind
More
of,
aggressive. Yeah.
yeah, and how those sort of personalities clash within this investigation of a Jedi that's fallen. And so that I think is the best episode of the six that are available to watch. But overall, like, it's fine. Like, I think it is made mostly for the diehard fans and the people that
Totally.
watched the
Clone
Clone
Wars and
Wars and
yeah.
things like that. But it never overstays its welcome either, which is a nice thing. Like, they always end at a point where it's like, okay, for a short, that's perfectly acceptable, and I'll take this over the prequels, even, like, even
Oh, of
having,
course. I mean, Clone Wars is that the
yeah,
best version of what the prequels were, and I enjoyed Clone Wars. I watched a machete order of Clone Wars, and yeah, I'm absolutely with you.
Danny
Where like
Trejo.
I I enjoyed my time with this, but I felt kind of disengaged while watching it, and or a little indifferent. Where Andor, ironically enough, like a character I didn't care about, a show that I was like kind of iffy on, and then you get into it and you're like, oh man, I'm like locked into every episode. Where even at their short running times, I found myself like drifting or just kind of having it on. And I felt like that's kind of what I did with Clone Wars and stuff too, where it was just like, it was that kind of, oh, it made me like Anakin Skywalker more as a character. It made me like really like Ahsoka when they introduced her there and became a fan of that character. And like, I think if you, just like you said, Eric, like if you really like Clone Wars and Bad Batch, this show is for you. It's just giving you a little bit more Ahsoka. It's giving you a little bit more of that Anakin that you know from that show, filling in some Count Dooku stuff, some Mace Windu stuff. Yaddle, we get Yaddle
Yeah.
in her full glory. So like that's awesome.
Voiced
Just
by
because
Bryce Dallas
Yaddle,
Howard.
yeah, Yaddle was always just that kind of joke in the prequels of like this derpy Yoda puppet with a wig on or
Well, female
whatever.
Yoda,
And
right? Like,
yeah,
that
I
was
know,
like the
but like
joke.
it just looked, the look of it was just
Yeah.
always really funny. Uh um
But that's when they
so
were also
having
using the puppets, right? Because in that first movie,
they used a broke ass Yoda puppet that they
yeah, and then they
replaced,
digitally
right? Yeah.
replaced it with a CGI one, which I think actually is one of the
Is
better
better because that Yoda puppet was
replacements.
awful. I don't know
Yeah.
why they I don't know. Just use the same puppet. I don't understand. I know he's younger, but he ages like molasses. Um,
He looked
so
like plastic.
it was awful, but like, so I like that because I really like Ahsoka. To get 3 episodes, you get her origin and you see how that character, everything that you've seen from her in now live action and animated is right from her birth. You see some elements after episode 3, so after Order 66, and you see what Ahsoka was doing after she survives Order 66 and when she's in hiding, and there's stuff with Inquisitors, which I think is really, really cool. There's even like how she trained to survive Order 66, and none of this is spoilers, it's just what the episodes are about. So I found myself, it's funny that you said the Qui-Gon and Dooku and Mace Windu stuff you were a little bit more into, where
No.
weirdly,
I wasn't
oh,
necessarily
okay, just
into it.
that one
It
episode,
was of the Dooku
those
stuff. The
ones, yeah,
one I liked the most was Choices, because it kind of felt
interesting,
like it was actually having an interesting conversation with
that's fair.
the Jedi Order and how, they're supposed to kind of be a neutral kind of party in situations, but at the same time they're still serving, the political sort of patriarchy,
Yeah,
and
sure.
they're it's
It's
almost
something
like
we've
they're,
talked about before, right? That they
yeah,
were just kind of, yeah.
but it is
Um,
challenging that, and I found myself liking Dooku a little bit more in terms of him being a
his
fully
motivations and
realized
stuff like
character.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that as well. But I just found myself, I guess, watching this style of animation and Ahsoka being such a huge part of the Clone Wars series, I found myself more interested in those Ahsoka episodes than the Dooku or Mace Windu. Or the Yaddle episode was fun just because giving Yaddle kind of a backstory in an episode to do some stuff, I think
It's
is kind of
Yaddle,
cool.
voiced by Bryce
Um,
Dallas Howard.
so yeah, I think, they're short. It's 6 episodes. Like there's not much more to talk about than that. Like I think ultimately it comes down to, do you like the art style from Clone Wars? Cuz I feel like a lot of people don't watch the Star Wars animated shows. Visions was maybe an exception to people because it was kind of all done by different anime studios, and it felt unique, where I felt like if you already hadn't watched Clone Wars or Bad Batch, you probably aren't interested in this, right?
Yeah.
Like it's if you've already tuned out of the Star Wars animated stuff thinking it's either for kids or the art style doesn't work for you, you're probably, I think you will find some value in this because maybe it's not as much of an investment as something like Clone Wars, right? Like Clone Wars, you look at the number of episodes and you just go, there's no way I'm doing that. And then so if you just want 6 quick episodes, if you're a fan of the prequels or some of those characters that we've mentioned, like it does give a little extra go, oh, that's what happened during that moment, or oh, that's what that character was doing, or what happened to that character, or something like that. So like it's not groundbreaking. It's not going to change the Star Wars universe. It's like you could skip this and you'd be totally fine to watch Andor or whatever is next. But like I don't think when the Ahsoka series is coming out, right, like that you're going to need to see these 3 episodes of that deal with Ahsoka's backstory here.
No,
Like
but it does work nicely as kind of like a primer if you are kind of somewhat unfamiliar with the
I agree
character
with
and you
that. Yeah,
don't
it gives you
want
enough.
yeah, and you don't want to go through the Clone Wars again because like until The Mandalorian, I didn't really like I had seen the character maybe once or
But
twice,
you'd never watch Clone Wars,
but I
right?
never
Yeah.
watched Clone Wars and so obviously I know who Rosario Dawson is
Yeah.
and obviously like the character means a lot to people that love, the Clone Wars and Star Wars canon in general. So going into this, I feel like that was a benefit there for Tales of the Jedi where we got enough of the backstory of Ahsoka to kind of get a generalization of who she is and how her path isn't actually not dissimilar to Obi-Wan Kenobi's in a lot of ways, but at the same time how that also changes in the one episode you mentioned with the Inquisitor and where that storyline goes in sort of post Revenge of the Sith. So I think that actually helps quite a bit. And I will say this, even though Anakin's barely in it, he's in one episode. I like this Anakin so
It's
much
so much
more
better. Yeah.
than Hayden Christensen's Anakin in the
That's a lot of
Skywalker
people. Yeah.
prequels. So
Yeah, that's the one thing. Like if you like the idea of Anakin or you hated what he was in the prequels due to performance or how he was written in those movies, um there is a really great character there that really adds a lot of depth to the Skywalker saga, right? Because like Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader is a huge part of that story. It's just if you've only seen those 3 prequel movies, you might either hate the character based on the kid in the first one, or Hayden Christensen in the next 2, and just the way that he's depicted in his fall. That show gives so much more to that character and that performance. By he's done the voice for a long time. I'm just a moron. um I'm trying to find it here. Oh, Matt Lanter. So yeah, the Clone Wars version of Anakin is great. Like it actually made me like the character. So when you see him in this, it's Clone Wars is worth going back to. It's just it is an investment. Maybe this show, opens it up to more people. I know they did that final season on Disney Plus, and they're doing Bad Batch right now, which is from the same team. But like even Bad Batch for me, like I gave those first few episodes a shot and I liked them, but the clone characters um were never really my thing. And this art style, I got to say, while it's beautiful at times, like even when I watched Clone Wars and watch this, it's just something about it doesn't click with me
it's
visually.
it's so
um
blocky in its designs, especially in the humans, where it kind of does feel like it is, and I don't want to say this and mean this in a bad way or a slight way, but it does kind of have this kind of childlike quality to it that feels like the look of it is made for younger kids. Like it's almost like it's just almost like a primary version of
Yeah.
animation.
Yeah.
And it's not bad. It's just that again, it kind of feels like when you watch it and you look at like the different styles of animation that have, come over time, this does have that kind of weird sort of like it's made for children look to it, even though there's more to it than that when it comes to the stories and the themes, which are a little bit more mature. And there are some stuff in these episodes that will maybe not be for younger kids. So
Yeah, totally agree. Can you hear me?
yeah,
Can you hear me? No, you can't. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap the episode. That is our review for Tales of the Jedi. It is now streaming on Disney Plus. Please go check out all of our other reviews over on Untitled Movie Reviews and Untitled Movie Podcast. And you can follow everything over on Letterboxd, which is at Untitled_movies. Please go follow me on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck, and you can follow Eric on all those social medias at EM6211, and go check out all of his reviews over on rogerstv.com/cinema scene. Can you hear me now, Eric?
I
Or no?
can. I sure
Okay,
can.
there we go.
Yes.
I was just wrapping the show because it said it disconnected, and then you were still there but couldn't hear me, so I was wrapping this show.
I was
I
just
don't.
joining the dark side.
Yeah, so I don't think we're gonna give a score or anything on this because, like, I feel like in an anthology series, it's kind of hard because they're all kind of different. But it's worth watching if you liked Clone Wars, and I feel like give it a shot if you're just into Star Wars. If you're watching Andor right now and you're trying to get back into it and stuff like that, like it's an easy watch. So
Or even before Ahsoka comes out,
that's
maybe
a
give it a
perfect
go.
time, right? Yeah. I already did all the stuff in a condensed version, but we will catch you at the next one, everyone. Until next time.
May the Force be with you always.